So, Om Shanti, welcome all of you. And before we begin, we'll spend a minute in silence to invoke the presence of the Supreme Being. So, welcome all of you to the Values for Life series episodes. And today we are almost towards the second year, ending the second year, episode 49, and it's on regard. And we have with us our very dear and senior sister, Sister Maureen, joining all the way from Sydney. She's lovingly also called Sister Maureen. So there you are. And before I begin, I'll just introduce you to her. She's actually been a part of our series quite a few times. Basically a native of Sydney, Australia, and has been into knowledge since almost, I must say now, 50 years. We are completing 50 episodes. In 2 years, she's completed her 50 years journey almost in Raj Yoga meditation. And she's instrumental in establishing and sustaining meditation centers in various parts of Asia Pacific, Australia, Hong Kong, Cambodia, and the Philippines. She tirelessly served as the moderator of the Hong Kong network on religion and peace for almost 20 years, 81 to 2002. And she has also been instrumental in founding the Peace Cafe, which was a vegetarian community cafe, which was offering values as well as environmental training and working with fair trade initiatives in Cambodia. And all of us know her from India for the project which she was very much a part of, the Future of Power project, which ran from 2006 to 2010. And she was instrumental in organizing over 50 programs in 50 big cities in India, whereby leaders from different professional backgrounds were got together to explore the use of soft power. So it was a big program and we must say a VIP program. And she has also been instrumental in between for coordinating the national office at Sydney in Australia. And currently, as we speak, since last 1.5 years, she's the coordinator of the Yarra Valley Living Center, where she's joining us from. And as always, a few lines before we pass it on to her. So we have with us today Sister Maureen Chen, whom we have invited to the series every now and then. The wisdom she shares is as if entering a spiritual den, whereby she scores always 10 out of 10. Her talks inspire one and all, be it women or men, because it helps them write their own destiny with the Almighty's pen. And today in India, actually, we are celebrating its 2nd October. And it's very famous worldwide, the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi. It is his birthday, actually. So it's a beautiful day and a beautiful value to begin with. So today she shall guide us on how to develop regard so that we can blend with each other like caramel which is charred. Maya then has no chance to enter and remains permanently barred, because now my spiritual antennae are on a constant guard. Every soul now has free expression in my spiritual yard, not having to worry in life about what I need to discard, because I meet and greet every soul with a Ruhani greeting card. So with this, I would now request Sister Claudia to officially welcome Sister Maureen. Over to you, Sister Claudia.
Good evening, Maureen. It's so nice to have you with us again. And in a so important value, which is regard. I was thinking maybe regard has to do something with the trust. So when we trust ourselves, we have regard for others as well and for ourselves. So it's quite nice to hear from you some points that it can touch us, so we can more and more give regard to ourselves and to others. So we are here at the fall time already. So I have some flowers from you that just represent the fall. So some still a little bit of the summer, so we are going that confluence from the summer to the fall. Still warm here, but the leaves are already showing the fall time. So welcome to our program tonight, today, of this episode. Shanti.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And you're going into fall and we're just coming into spring. So we're also just starting to become warm here. And you mentioned, Manoj Bhai, that it's Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. It's also Didi Nirmala's birthday. So Didi's our Didi, Australian Didi still, although she's based in Gyan Sarovar, she's still our Didi. So it's lovely that her birthday's on the same day, because two very great souls. So yes, very nice to be with you again, and it's such a wonderful series on values. And it's so good to go deep into the values, because there's so many nuances, you know, there's slight differences. And I was just chatting with the team before we started about regard, respect, and dignity. And we're also talking about pride. And now pride has a very negative connotation often, but actually it can be something good, it's something positive. But, you know, so many of the values have been perverted or corrupted, just like much of our language. So when I was thinking about these and going into this whole area of regard, it seems that regard, really the essence of it is that we consider, you know, we give regard to something or someone, we give regard to the worth. So I'd like to take that into the whole area of dignity. And dignity is really quite subtle, the difference between dignity and respect. So maybe just for all of us to think before we start about these three words and the slight differences between regard, respect, and dignity. And you all have your own languages too, so maybe there's a difference in your language for these words. Let's just think about them for a minute. So maybe later in the question answers, you know, there'll be a time to interact, and you can, and at the end of this, maybe speak a little bit to your understanding of the differences. But I recently was introduced to the work of someone called Dr. Donna Hicks, and she's been a conflict management consultant going into conflict areas, including like Ireland and Africa. And she's done so much work on conflict resolution. And as a psychologist, what she was doing is observing what was really going on in these conferences, because as we all know, they very seldom conclude with any real transformation. And being in Australia, you know, we've had this ongoing kind of dialogue, which has hardly been a dialogue. It's, anyway, there's all this work that the Aboriginal people, the Indigenous people of Australia, have been trying to have a voice. And I would say it's still far from, they're still far from being really acknowledged. And even though, you know, there's some understanding, it seems that something deep is going on that's preventing this movement forward of acknowledging their greatness. And what this Donna Hicks was talking about, she said that when she'd go to these conferences, she would see so much happening, like in people's emotions. And, you know, when they break, you know, she'd hear comments. And what she came to was that we may talk about respect, but it seems that respect nowadays, it's probably not the origins, but nowadays we often have the feeling that people need to earn our respect. They need to be kind of worthy of our respect. And I think it's something I've thought about over the years, that the connection between love and respect. You know, can you respect someone without loving them? Can you love someone without respecting them? And, you know, I think you can be attached to someone without respecting them. I don't know, it's very, it brings up a lot of feelings. And what she came to the conclusion is that the underlying feeling that's kind of preventing resolution is this understanding of dignity. So after many years of doing conflict resolution work, now her whole focus is on helping people to understand and to practice dignity. And dignity is to recognize the inherent worth of a being. Now just think about that, the inherent. So it means it's there. Everyone who is born onto this earth has an inherent worth. And this is what we need to be aware of in interaction with each other, to maintain another's dignity in any kind of verbal or action-orientated approach. So dignity. And when I was thinking more deeply about this, I was thinking that because it is an inherent worth, actually we can't lose it. We can't forget it. We can't let it go, because it's so integral to who I am. My dignity is, it kind of is it's a statement of who I am. And so what Donna Hicks was talking about is that there's a value. I have a value. Just because I got born into this world, I have inherent value. And that can make me very vulnerable, because when my value is not recognized, I feel violated. I feel attacked. I feel hurt. And as she says, if we are hurt, like she says that it the part of the brain that records physical injury is the same part of the brain that records emotional injury. So when we are physically hurt, we look for care, love, healing, help. So we have doctors, we have clinics, we have first aid kits for physical injury. But what do we do when we're emotionally hurt? Where do we go with that? And even if we went to a psychologist or we went to someone, a counselor, even though people may think they have respect for us, they may not see us with that dignity. Sometimes even the people who are trying to help have a little bit of an attitude of being superior. And that doesn't work in a situation where people need their dignity to be restored because it's been violated. And when she would ask in these conferences, who here feels that they've ever been violated, that their dignity has been violated? She says everyone in the room to some extent has felt that. So maybe just so we can go a little bit deeper into this, can you think about a time when you feel your dignity was violated? So let's just have a minute or so to think about that. And what was the feeling? It's often a feeling of being unseen, unheard, dismissed, unsafe. What was your feeling? And even she was saying that often when people have this kind of memory of when their dignity was violated, it might not even be exactly themselves. It could be their community, their tribe, their nationality, their culture. So of course we know that we are souls and our identity is the soul, but still we're in these human bodies. And so it's not to over-identify with our culture and our nationality, our religion, all of these things. But what we're talking about is not expecting the dignity of others, but what we're exploring together here is how to give that dignity to others so that we are not hurting the feelings of others. So it's really a very deep aspect, this whole thing of dignity, and especially when nations need to heal, because I don't know if you know anything about the Indigenous people in Australia, the Australian Aboriginal people, but they're really, their culture has been decimated. And if you decimate someone's culture, they don't have a kind of a ground to stand on to start building it, and so souls get very lost when their physical identity is compromised. So what can we do to create that dignity? What are we able to practice in our lives so we can keep the dignity towards someone else? Because if people's dignity is not kind of respected, you could say we don't respect someone's dignity, then they will become hard and encased. And, that's when we build up masks and we don't feel safe to be ourselves. So what we need to do, and this is also what Donna Hicks has offered, she's offered 10 essential elements of dignity. And one is acceptance of identity. And that's a very deep thing, because sometimes we don't even accept people's personalities. We want them to be different. We want them to be like us, rather than just accepting whatever identity someone has identified with. Like, one interesting thing in Australia, to be classified or to be recognized as an Aboriginal person, you only need to identify as an Aboriginal. Because in Australia, many of the Aboriginal people are as fair as I am, but they don't feel white. They feel Aboriginal. They feel Indigenous. They don't relate to the values and the culture that the white people live by. And so they need to be recognized for their own identity, even when their skin color might look the same as any other white person. So it really gets very subtle. And then, of course, you have people's identities, sexual identities, religious identities, but really to accept someone's identity. And then secondly is to give recognition. And I think one of the definitions that I was offered when I used to ask people, I used to study a lot about love. And I used to ask people, what's your definition of love? And someone offered, love is recognition. And that's very deep, because can we love someone if we've not recognized them? And it's just like, I can't even love myself if I don't recognize myself. I can't love God if I don't have a clear recognition of God. I could worship, I could praise, but to really have love and an intimate relationship, there's a need for recognition. Know, recognition comes from this word to know. And then we need to acknowledge. So acknowledgement is also a very interesting word. I mean, all of these words you could go so deeply into, but that's got the word knowledge in it as well. So to acknowledge is to accept and understand. It's kind of got this accept and understand. And then to include. So we need to include the other person. And it's very easy to mix with people that we feel are like ourselves. We don't have to make any effort, but to really make that effort to include people that are different. And it can be very subtle things, like in our community here, we have a few people that are very introvert. And some of us, including me, are quite extrovert. So when there's a discussion, the extroverts tend to take up all the space and speak. And the introverts, don't get much of a chance to share. And sometimes they're not ready to share, even at that time, because introverts often, it might be a generalization, but often think more deeply. So they can't come up with something quick and like that. They will go away and think and go a bit deeper. And it's really worth waiting for what they have to share. But it might come later, So sometimes what we do here is we try to have a bit of a shorter sharing, and then over breakfast, when the introverts have had a little bit more time to think about it and a bit more space, they don't feel so focused on, then they can share such deep and amazing things with us. So that inclusion, of course, at the moment here also, I think out of the 8 people that are staying here, there's 4 different or 5 different nationalities, and 2 people there, English is not perfect. So we need to speak more slowly, more clearly, but this is the way we include the other person. If we just speak amongst ourselves at our normal, rate of speaking, speed of thinking and talking, they won't be able to join the conversation. So we need to be very mindful to include, of course, not force. And that sometimes feels like it. Sometimes the introverts feel a bit pressured, but other introverts, if you just stop and ask them, what do you think? They have so much to say. Others still don't want to say anything. So, the way we include needs to acknowledge and respect the other person's space. So inclusion, and then also independence. So very often we can step in and help people or take away their independence. But if we want to really acknowledge someone's dignity, as much as possible, we would like them to stand in their own power. And that's an interesting word to bring in. You heard that I was working with the project called The Future of Power. And because of that, I had a lot of interest in studying about power. One of the books I picked up was called Power and Innocence. And I've always really appreciated that quality of innocence as very gentle and harmless and, benign. It's a lovely quality. But this book was talking about pseudo-innocence, where we kind of pretend to be innocent, or we just keep quiet because we aren't able to assert ourselves. We don't know how to stand in our own power. And what the book was saying is that most violence comes from people who have this pseudo innocence, because sooner or later they break. You can only suppress yourself and be unacknowledged for a certain amount of time. And I think this is very closely linked with dignity, because when we take away people's dignity, we actually disempower them. So independence, I think, is a great word to bring in there as really encouraging and supporting another person in their independence to empower the other person, because we all need to express our power. That word is a word that's also very misused and abused, but power is not a bad thing. As we know, in the Brahma Kumaris, we have these 8 powers and the Shaktis that I think now the Navratri, the festival of the Shaktis is going on. So power is not something we want to negate. We don't want to stop anyone from having power. We just want to share it. And so to, give dignity to another is to share power, which is really to enable the other person to be independent, not to try to have power over anyone so that they are under us. So independence is a really great one in there. And then safety. So going back to that word vulnerability, when people, are a minority, they can often feel unsafe. They can often feel overpowered by the majority. And so to give someone dignity, whether it's a minority or it's just any single person who's trying to stand in their own dignity, we need to offer safety. And another value or maybe it's a value that we're really trying to engage in here at the Yarra Valley Living Centre, which is a retreat centre, is to live as community. And a true community is where everyone feels safe to be themselves. If anyone has to feel they need to fit in, then they're not being themselves. It's a pseudo community, just like pseudo innocence. There can be pseudo community where it's not true community. We live together, but people don't trust each other. They don't feel completely free to be themselves, to speak without being judged or being laughed at or felt to be, less than in any way. So that safety is such an important aspect of community and in, honoring people's dignity. And of course, fairness. Fairness is so important in this because fairness means equality. If we're fair, that means everyone is treated equally. And we might think that we do that, but I think if we check ourselves, there's many ways in which we still practice hierarchy, in the wrong way. Actually, the word hierarchy means holy order. So there's nothing wrong with hierarchy if it's a holy order. But sometimes it's just a power trip and it's an abuse. So yeah, to really have that bottom line of being fair. And to give others the benefit of the doubt. So for those who are translating, that could be a little bit tricky to understand. But what it means is if someone does something and you are wondering why they did that, then to really be open and explore why they said that or did that, and to give them the benefit of the doubt. It means don't judge people straight off. Try to get behind what they were meaning, what they were saying, and yeah, and also I would say also understanding why people might be behaving in very, inappropriate ways. Because when people are disempowered, they often turn to alcohol or violence. And so we might judge others as being drunks or being lazy or violent. But, if we give the benefit of the doubt, we think, why are they like that? And we often see in a society that often the society has created that situation. And I remember, we had, it was Mike George, he was in Hong Kong to give a talk. And at that time, there was a situation where a group of boys had raped and murdered in a very ugly way, a very violent way, a young woman. And someone asked Mike, I remember it very clearly in the public talk, who is responsible? Are those boys responsible, or are their parents responsible? Because, not always, but sometimes we're the result of our upbringing. Not always, parents have enough guilt. I don't want to put that on them. So it's not always the case. But I liked his answer very much. He said, no one's to blame, but we are all responsible. And I think that's the case in a situation. For example, I'm just taking Australia as an example because I'm here. But this situation with the Aboriginal people and how, devastated actually their culture and their community has become. So, okay, let's say no one's to blame because there's a lot of historic stuff. But we are all responsible. I'm responsible. Today, now, living in this country, I can do something, whatever it is. I can do something. So fortunately, actually, at our retreat center, we have some retreats coming up with Aboriginal communities of women. So they're going to discuss Aboriginal law, L-O-R-E, so their culture and their systems. So, that's what we can do. We can say yes when they want to come here and do this, because we can. And so, and then when they're here, how are we going to behave? How can we do more than possibly we would do for anyone to readdress the imbalance, because there's been a very serious imbalance. And so I can't go back in history and fix what's happened. I personally may not have contributed to it. Maybe I did in a past birth, but I can take some responsibility now to address the wrongs. So that's what I can do. So giving the benefit of the doubt for the behavior of someone, and, that's led into this thing of being, well, we go down to actually this point of accountability. So accountability is that responsibility. So I'm accountable. I hold myself accountable to the upliftment, the improvement, the reinstigating of the dignity of the Aboriginal people. They have so much to share and so much to offer. And they're the original inhabitants of this land that I have benefited from my whole life. So, yeah, I'm responsible. And then, of course, the major one, well, it's probably throughout all of these, is understanding. And understanding takes a lot of patience and care and time. And I would also say I need to educate myself, because I can't have that understanding without educating myself. There are so few Aboriginal people. I don't meet them. In fact, when I grew up in Australia, I didn't meet an Aboriginal person till I was 19. That's how segregated and, that's the way, and also how few there are as well. So, if I'm thinking about this understanding, how can I have an understanding of Aboriginal people if I don't meet them? So I've read books, I watch videos, documentaries, and engage in conversations. And as I said, we're welcoming Aboriginal people to come here and do a retreat as an opportunity to further understand the culture and the people. So, because I think we've just got one Aboriginal sister in Australia. We have had 2 or 3. One's passed away. One is, around, but a little bit distant. So we don't have many within the BK family to learn from either. So understanding is an effort. It's not that it's just next door to me, just around me. I need to reach out and educate myself, but I want to do that because I want to take some responsibility. I want to address wrongs that have happened in the past. So when we're talking about this whole area of dignity, these are just some of the elements, and I'll go through them again. So the first is acceptance of identity. Second is recognition. Third is acknowledgement. The fourth is inclusion. Fifth is independence. Sixth is safety. 7 is fairness. 8 is give the benefit of the doubt. 9 is understanding. And 10 is accountability. So if we, go into all of these, especially in areas where maybe I know that certain communities have been disadvantaged, perhaps, and by practicing dignity, I can make a difference. But even in everyday life, I need to all the time keep this awareness of having dignity for every single person. And there was a particular situation that's just come to my mind. I wasn't there, but Sister Rajni from Japan, she tells stories in such a way that you feel like you were. She was sharing when one time she traveled from Ahmedabad to Mount Abu with Dadi Gulzar. And, in those days, the road wasn't so good. So we used to stop halfway and have a break. And they stopped to have their lunch in this picnic area. And there was a girl working, a young woman working in the picnic area, cleaning and sweeping. And Dadi Gulzar said to this woman with so much what I would call now dignity, she asked her, she said, "Oh, we wanted to have our lunch. Is it all right if we sit here?" And Sister Rajni was saying she said it with so much respect and regard. And now I would use that word dignity. So that other person would have felt, oh, somebody sees me. Because very often people who are cleaners don't get seen. They just meant to disappear when we turn up, so they don't get in our way. They don't, flick their dust in our direction. There's often this kind of superiority that we don't even notice that we carry. But Dadi Gulzar spoke to her with real dignity, and I wouldn't have used that word before, but I love now to really embrace this word dignity, because I think it does have a lot more depth to it, as far as I can see, than respect. And also Donna Hicks is an expert in the field of conflict resolution. So if she says dignity is something we need to pay attention to, I also respect her experience in this field, because, to try to go into areas to do conflict resolution, we all know how difficult that is. And if she's going into areas where there's been perhaps hatred from both sides for decades, it is very hard to shift that, because there's been decades of hurt, decades of sorrow. And so, yeah, I hope I could paint that picture for you, that you could just imagine, just see that kind of dignity that we can have for another person. But it also, is connected with respect. So there are also ways in which we can, maintain our self-respect, because dignity, at least what I'm thinking today, I mean, there's so much more depth to go into, but what I'm thinking today is dignity is more how I treat others. But to keep my self-respect is to maintain my dignity, because then it can't be damaged by another person. So I need to build that security within myself and, set healthy boundaries between myself and others. So I don't allow other people to put me down, to abuse me, to insult me. I either can not hear it, but I would like to think, have the courage to speak to the other person and say, use this language of nonviolence that says, when I heard you say, I felt, and I'm needing, so would you be willing to, this kind of language that we don't blame people, we don't demand people treat us in a certain way, but we help people to understand the impact that communication might have on us, because if they have that impact on us, they may have that impact on others. And we're not demanding. If they don't change, they don't change. That's not my business, because I don't need to lose my self-respect because somebody seemingly puts me down. But what I can do is I can share, because I want to stay connected with the other person. So it's not pleasing and appeasing other people, but really meeting people really at an equal level. Because if we're going to practice soul consciousness, we need to practice this bhai drishti, this vision of brotherhood, where we do see that equality. And also, if I want to keep my self-respect, I would say that I need to keep my commitments wherever possible, both for my own self-respect, but also, this is where respect is a bit different to dignity. It is also earned. So if I expect people to respect me, then should I not be respect worthy in that sense of, if I make commitments and promises and don't keep them, it's a bit hard for people to have that respect for my word. Maybe they can still respect me as a being, but they need to respect that when I say something, I do it. And of course, if I can't, then I communicate. I don't just not turn up or not follow through with a commitment. And I can take time to reevaluate my values and to discard beliefs and biases and assumptions and myths. Because, I know growing up in Australia, there were certain nationalities that we used to discriminate against, and it wasn't Aboriginals because we didn't know any, but some other migrant groups. Even as a child, I used to say mean things. And now when I think about it, it's like, oh, how could I have ever done that? Like maybe name calling or things like that, but everyone did. And just as a young child, I didn't have that discernment that that wasn't okay. So we have often been brought up with prejudices and biases and beliefs about other people. And I need to reassess all of those and clear them. Like I noticed it when I was working in an office, and my work was to interview people. This is when I first started Gyan. I was working in an office and I was interviewing people. And I noticed that I'd see the card and the name on the card. And some nationalities I would think, oh, nice, I want to meet this person. And others I would think, oh, this is someone I'll just, I'll do my work. And I saw just reading the names, because I could tell the nationality from the names, I had a preference. So it wasn't necessarily, I didn't act out in any kind of discriminatory way, but I had a preference for certain nationalities. And so when I noticed that, I thought, oh, look at that. Here I am practicing soul consciousness, and just based on someone's name, I'm judging this person, and I'm either interested to meet them or not interested. So we can check these things when we see them come up. And yeah, as I say, reevaluate our biases and judgments and beliefs. We also, I think, in maintaining this self-respect, need to have a deep understanding of what it means to be loving and detached. So, in Hindi, the word is nyara. And nyara means to stand apart from, to be unique. It doesn't mean detached, as in the English word, don't care, but it really means unattached. So to be loving and unattached might be a better word to use, because to stay in my self-respect, I don't want to be what they call enmeshed, caught up in someone else's story, in someone else's journey, in someone else's world. As a sister was sharing lately, she no longer feels herself drawn into somebody else's orbit. So somebody might be spinning with negativity or with drama or with whatever it is. So, she was sharing with me that she's able to not get caught up in that orbit, the other person's orbit, but stand apart from, see it, don't judge it, but don't get caught up in it either. Don't be pulled into that in any way. And I thought that was a very nice way to see that. And keep discovering my own core values and potential. Because as Baba says, if I don't know myself, if I don't know my specialities, I don't know myself. So even today in the Muli, which you may not have even read yet, because we're on Sunday, it says that we need to know, who am I? We know we're a soul and we know all the generalizations, but who am I? Which soul am I? And that we take our number based on being able to activate the fortune that's on offer in my life. Actually, there's so much fortune on offer, but sometimes I don't recognize it. I don't take it in. I just have to tell you a beautiful thing that happened yesterday. I was talking to a brother who I hadn't connected with for a very long time. I can say his name because many of you might know him, Sam McNally. He's a musician. And he was saying to me, oh, I just realized how people love me. So many people love me. And I thought, how beautiful to hear that. And if we all think about it, there are many people who love us, but sometimes we only hear the criticism. We only hear the negativity, and we don't realize how people love us. And I was thinking about it since that conversation yesterday. If I feel loved, of course, it's much easier to love others, So sometimes I'm blocking a lot of good things that are already in my life and could come more into my life, like that, realizing how much people love us. I thought it was just beautiful. It was so clean. It wasn't said with ego, but just with a joy, actually, realizing that people love us. And be true to the sense of who I am, whether people support that, acknowledge it, believe in it, but I have to be who I am. At the end of the day, that's who I'm left with, you know, to discover myself, as Brian Bacon used to say when he was doing the self-management leadership, this process of discovering my deep values. It's not creative, it's detective. I'm not going to make myself out to be, you know, he said Mother Teresa, we could say Dadi Komaka. I don't have to think of myself in comparison, but I need to do that detective work to see what are my core values? What am I willing to live for? What am I willing to die for? Because that's the key to knowing who I am. And another beautiful thing, bring more mutual respect into communication. That goes again with that dignity, mutual respect. So when I'm engaging with anyone, stay in my self-respect and give respect to the other. So, and I love that, you know, Dadi Prakashmani said that, give self-respect. That's a bit different too, to saying give respect, give self-respect. That's almost like this word, dignity. And yeah, to avoid criticizing, interfering, and a very interesting one, avoid criticizing, interfering, or giving advice that hasn't been asked for. You know, I don't know if you've experienced that, but sometimes people give us what we call unsolicited advice. That's the term we use in English. It means they give us advice, but we haven't asked them. And I don't think it's our right to give anyone advice if they haven't asked me, because they might not want my advice. I might not be the person that they look to for advice. So it's up to everyone to choose who they're going to take advice from. So I think that's something we can all pay attention to, not giving unsolicited advice that hasn't been asked for. I could say to someone, do you want to know what I think? And then let them say yes or no before I respond, but not give advice without it being asked for. And a very big thing, being honest in all relationships. So being as honest as I possibly can. We can only be as honest as we know we are honest, because we all have blind spots in all of these things. So we can only be as honest as possible. If I make a mistake, admit it, apologize, you know, do what I need to do to clarify, but be honest in communication with everyone. So yeah, just a little bit on regard, which I went much more into dignity, because I found it is, when I say take another, when it says regard means take another into consideration, I would say that is what I'm doing when I give dignity to another person. And self-respect is when I maintain my own dignity. So that's how I see these. And yeah, time for your input here and questions or comments.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sister Maureen. It was amazing. Like, I was just taking a lot of notes, and those 10 points which you mentioned, all starting from dignity, acknowledgement, recognition, all these values very closely related to how to develop regard for self and others. So a question which is there in front on the chat box, it is like, often at times when we want to keep our self-respect and we disagree with someone's opinions. We are afraid of losing them or worried about the bond which we have. So how can we maintain this balance of maintaining our self-respect, but not losing the relationship as well at the same time?
It's very interesting that you asked that, and maybe I can share a very personal story in that regard. Because I had exactly this big dilemma with Daddy Janki, because I felt that I had a higher opinion of myself than she had of me. And I was in a dilemma because I was thinking, if I keep my opinion of me and disregard hers, I'm disregarding her. And if I keep her opinion of me and disregard mine, I might lose my self-respect. And I went back to Hong Kong. I was living in Hong Kong at the time, and I went back to Hong Kong, and we had a 2-hour yoga bhatti, and I really felt I died alive. So I wrote to Daddy and I said, I think everything's okay now. I'm dead. My opinion doesn't matter. I'm dead. I'm ready to listen to whatever you say. And surprisingly, she wrote back and said, no, don't say that. Your opinion is very important. And I thought, oh, why can't I just be dead? It's easier. And very interestingly, when I went back to Madhuban and met her the next season, I disagreed with everything she said. And I thought, oh, how come? I thought I'm dead and I'll just say Haji, Haji. What I realized is I died to her opinion of me. See how subtle this is, what it means to die alive. I died to her opinion of me, and our relationship improved from that point onwards. So I think there's a lot in there that you can work out, but yeah, but I have a great interest in this study of nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And what I would do now is learn how to, I'm not perfect, but I've learned how to communicate so that I can express to the other person. Like I would say to Daddy, if I had, had that practice, I would have said, Daddy, when I hear you say whatever she said, I feel because I'm needing, and I wonder if you can clarify. And then I could have understood where she was coming from, but we just hear something, we think that we're judged, and we go away feeling judged. And it's maybe not what the other person was saying at all. It's just that we are, well, I have to speak for myself. I have been, and I still quite am, sensitive. So I can take things personally, and maybe it wasn't meant like that. So, go back and clarify and communicate, and it'll just make you closer.
Wonderful.
I hope that answers it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful answer. I think you spoke about the word detachment rather than saying that we should say unattached. So I think there's a question from a parent who's saying that I really give a lot of unsolicited advice to my adolescent kid. And I really feel he always tells me, oh, it's none of your business. You don't need to tell me. And I think particularly someone from the West is asking this because in India, we still don't have such kids. But it's on the rise here as well. So the soul is asking that, how do I deal with such rejection when my adolescent kids keep saying that again and again?
Yeah, well, again, communication is so important because actually we're not giving dignity to that. You're saying adolescent, so he's not a kid. He's growing up. It's the time for him to establish himself and his self-actualizing. Self-actualizing is a very important part of growing up. Self-actualizing means coming into his power, but don't take power in a wrong way. So if you could step back and, try to work on that relationship so that he feels he can ask you when he wants your advice, and not that you just jump in and give it all the time. Because really, if you give advice when it's not wanted, they'll never listen to you. So what's the point? And in fact, they'll run away from you because they don't want you to keep telling them. So I think you need to have a good chat and see ask your son, what's going on? When I try to share with you what I feel, you seem to be, I feel rejected. So can you, explain, can you share with me what you feel when you hear me saying these things? You can start like that, because we really need to listen to each other. That's a big part of giving respect, of giving dignity.
Right. So there's a question that in the teachings here at Brahma Kumaris, we are told not to gossip. So do you think that gossiping is actually a lack of self-respect, and also obviously lack of respect for the other one as well?
It is that, and what it is very much is a lack of courage. We don't have courage to talk directly to the person. And so we talk to everyone else around. It's cowardly. I think gossip is cowardly. And I feel it's so unhelpful. Like if I hear somebody said something about me and they're not willing to tell me what's going on, I feel they're being cowardly. And also maybe there's always two sides to this, I'm not approachable, that they can talk to me. So I would probably start with that by saying, I've heard somebody's, told me that they heard you say this, if you can, without revealing what the person said and who said it. But I've heard you said this about me, and they've probably told 10 people, so you probably can say it. I've heard you said this about me, and I'm just wondering where that's coming from. And I'd like to, I'm here in the Brahma Kumaris to change. I will try to see what I need to change. I will go to a therapist if you want me to, because I really want to change and be the perfect being Baba wants me to be and who I really am. So can you share with me what's going on? But I would say it's cowardly. I think whenever we gossip about someone, we're a coward.
Right. Interesting. So it was good that we should be able to do communication for the first two questions, but gossip is not a good form of communication. It's being covered. Thank you. So another question, I mean, there's a lot of overlap between respect and regard, but the question which someone is asking is it possible to just have regard for someone's position outwardly because they are in so and so post and position, so I need to show regard, but I absolutely have internally no respect for them? Is it possible?
Yeah, it is possible, and sometimes it's necessary, because we have to function, and we might feel internally very conflicted because we don't share the same values with that person. And so we don't kind of, feel easy with the way they're speaking or implementing things, but they are in that position, and yeah, we have to just learn how to be respectful and give them regard, and as much as possible keep our own value system. But again, it's good if it's possible to talk to that person. Like I had a conflict resolution with one of the seniors, and I expressed what I felt, and I said, I don't think that's right that you did this. Do you? And that senior said, she thought about it and she said, no, I think it's right. I said, okay, that's okay then. We have different values. I don't think it's right, but I respect that that's your value. And I really felt resolved. I could put an end to that situation because I'd communicated. And we don't share the same values. That's the thing, sometimes there's a conflict of values. Like we had someone coming to our center once that had AIDS and, you know, used to smoke. And because he was smoking, he'd use aftershave. And he'd come and sit in the class, in the morning class, and no one wanted to sit next to him because it smelled. But, you know, at least he was coming, you know, at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he was making that effort. And, you know, do we have a right to pick someone out? You know, I mean, or do we just try to see whether they will change with time? So, you know, some people value that inclusion and the kind of mercy or the compassion for that soul. Others value the purity of the atmosphere and think that person shouldn't be there. And it's hard to say which of those is right. Which is right? Different values, different importance on values. I don't know if one is right and one is wrong, actually.
Yeah.
And that's where the person who's coordinating the center, you know, sometimes we have to let them decide because there's different opinions. And what I did in that case is I checked with the seniors, you know, who supported me in what I thought, but I could be wrong. I mean, don't even think I'm wrong, but it clashes with someone else's values, maybe.
Yes, fantastic. Because continuing in this league, you spoke about right now about center coordinators and students, a little bit of clash happening. And also you spoke about the hierarchy, which we have in any spiritual organization, not BKs for that matter. So someone is saying that I find it difficult to give regard sincerely from the heart to the one who is not true to what they preach. So how to deal with this?
Okay, again, you know, I mostly can share through my experiences. So there was a sister, a senior, who used to visit us in Hong Kong. And I actually did not have that great regard for that particular soul. And what I decided to do is to see that soul as I would like her to be. And when they visited and I kept that vision, that soul behaved in a much better way, in fact, almost completely what I would have liked her to be. And I realized from that if I've got a negative vision of lacking regard for someone, that person is kind of on a defensive. So they can't behave very well because, you know, my vision is affecting that person. So they will behave badly because of my vision. Like I get affected by people's vision sometimes. They see me in a certain way. Like if someone thinks I'm careless, I'll do something careless. And I think, oh, I'm affected by their vision. It happens. So I affect others with my vision. So if I want people to be more, behave in a way I would like them to behave, see them in that way, and they will. That was my personal experience.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll just take two more questions. One of them is a very simple one and interesting one. It's like when we write letters or emails, we write warmest regards or kind regards. Why don't we write kind respect or warm respect?
Yeah, because actually it's another meaning of regard. To give your regards is, you know, that's another meaning of it. But yeah, I think it also means I'm thinking of you. I'm taking you into consideration in writing this. You know, because if you're writing to someone, you are taking them into consideration, the way you write, the words you use, you know. So I think it's the right word, regard.
The last question is very interesting again. Oh, I don't know. Am I muted? Just a moment.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. It was just getting in. Yeah. So it is, someone is saying that if you look at the senior dadis in the organization, so it's just for people who don't know about dadis, I mean to say the seniors of our organization, the Brahma Kumaris, where we belong to, all of us, they had a lot of regard for each other's suggestions. So what was the secret to develop that sense of regard for each other, which they feel is now lacking in the institution right now among the center coordinators with each other compared to the
Ah,
seniors? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, isn't that a good question? A good thing to think about. Why is it? Why do we? Well, I think, as we are trying to build community here, I think we really are considering each other's advice, and everyone has, I think, a freedom to express themselves. And I think that is dignity. If I am willing to listen to someone's point of view, it's giving dignity to that person. So I think we can all practice this. And it is a personal practice, but it's good if we create it in the little groups that we're in, like whether it's our family, whether it's our office or the center, as much as possible, do it on that micro level. Don't think about the big organization because, it's too big. What can I do about it? But I can practice it. And, that's what it's Gandhi's day today. That's what Gandhi's slogan was: be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. So you be that. You give regard to other people's ideas. You listen. If each one of us does that, we change the organization naturally. So don't look to the big organization, say they don't do this, they don't do that. What am I doing?
Am I right? Yeah, and I think we can close on this, that it's Gandhiji's birthday. So one of the quotes about regard is, he said that the golden way is to be friends with the world and to regard the whole human family as being one. So if we can develop that pure consciousness, the soul consciousness vision for each one of us, regard will become quite easy. Yeah, so thank you so much. I would now request Dr. Ashok Mehta to please propose the vote of thanks. Yeah, over to you.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti. So nice to hear Sister today. This takes me back to my early interaction with her in 91 when I visited Hong Kong. And I think we had a lovely time together doing a number of programs at that time. Respect and regard is something which I think we all have to learn from each one of us. What Baba says is something totally, at the highest level. We must respect, we must regard, especially in our organization, we always say seniors. This is one of the dictums that we always hear. I think it's interesting, and that question was asked, how come Dadis respected each other? There were 46 of them at one time. I've seen them together. And they used to, at least 6 of them, I have seen them having lunch together, laughing together, working together. I think it was the upbringing. They were brought up from the early childhood. I think they came in the organization at a very formative age. Well, most of us have come after a long personal lives in different areas. And therefore, we find it difficult. At least I find it difficult to accept many things in the organization. If something is going wrong, you can't tell. I mean, that's not acceptable to me. But this is how it is. As a respect and regard, you can't tell anybody anything. So I have a feeling that I think its upbringing is a different way of, the West, you are brought up in a different way. In the East, we are brought up in a different way. In the East, for example, in our families, we are used to respect tremendously. your parents, your grandparents, your elders. That was, but at that point of time in the 40s and 50s, all of us were young, and we used to sometimes feel that this is too much, you can't say anything to your elders, or that means your elder brother by a few years, you can't tell them anything. I think that was a different way of maintaining your family traditions. But anyway, I think I enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much. And I think you were also very frank in telling some of the personal stories. I think we enjoyed it. Thank you very much, sister.
Thank you, Brother Ashok. Yes, remember well our times together, both in Hong Kong and in Abu and in Future of Power. Many good opportunities. Lovely. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Dr. Mehta. And before we go into the meditation, I would request Anu's sister to please do the announcements and the photograph as well. Thanks.
Sure, I'll do that. So a quick announcement. So as you can see, I hope you all can hear me. So
Yes,
the values workshop after 1 week on regard will be on 8th of October, Saturday evening, 7:30 p.m. India time and 7 a.m. West Coast.
Sorry to interrupt. I think your video is not, the screen sharing is still not happening. Do you want me to share it for you?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Sure. I have other things to share though, but okay.
Okay, so you can
Let's-
just redo it because it is just saying started screen sharing, but we can't see anything.
Okay.
Just do it again because it's maybe hung up or something. Yeah, now it's, yeah. So just do it again. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I'm understanding I'm in India. It's a compatibility. Okay, so we'll go this way maybe. So the workshop on regard after 1 week with Brother David Goodman. He will join us from Scotland. We'll go through the experiential exercises on regard. And again, another insightful talk and meditation by Brother David. Definitely there's so much input from Sister Maureen today, and we can't thank her enough how much we got about it. So please join us then. And then the next one is our next episode is episode number 50. That's golden episode on surrender or samarpan. And for that, it's our fortune to have B.K. Mohini Didi from New York. She's the additional chief and administrative head and American director of Brahma Kumaris. It includes North, South, Central America, and Caribbean. So it is really, really our fortune. And it is happening on Saturday, 15th of October, 8 p.m. India time, 7:30 a.m. West Coast time, and it will be just 1 hour. Please note and please join us then. And our second anniversary is here. It was October 2020. We started with the World Values Day. And it's amazing how these values have kept on going and kept us as well as all the audience going. So it's time to celebrate the second anniversary. It's happening on Sunday, 23rd October, morning 9 a.m. for India time, what is Saturday evening, 8:30 p.m. West Coast time. And it would be a special occasion featuring Brother Eric in conversation with Asha Didi and Charlie. So please note and join us then. And you'll get all the information about all these programs on our websites. That's vihasa.in and vancouver.brahmakumaris.ca. And all the videos, including today's video, you can find on our YouTube channels. So check us there. Thank you. Maybe Sister Claudia, you wanted to announce something now?
Yes. Om Shanti. I just like to tell you, because we are reaching the 5th episode, that is golden episode. So I thought that it would be a very nice time for us to give some contribution to the Global Hospital in Montagu. So the Global Hospital don't only help the people from that community, but help lots of BKs, many BKs. I myself, I work there as a volunteer. My husband also work, and many volunteers are there. And I see many people. I saw my sister, she had a a little problem there. The global hospital is always there for us. So we decide for this value, the golden episode, to send some contribution to the global hospital. So you have there, if you are on the medical Europe or somewhere, you can send to this point of life info donation. For those who are in India, we are still getting from the global hospital the link. So when you send, you just can send contribution for the golden regard to the golden episode of Values for Life. So hope that you can do something, because that's a hospital for all of us. It's for the community, for the people there, but also for us. Om Shanti.
So thank you so much, Sister Claudia and Sister Anu. So now we move on to the meditation with Sister
We take a
Maureen.
picture though,
Yeah.
quickly. Sorry, we are running out of time, I know. Everybody, if you can open your video, let's take it, right, with Sister Maureen. The moment we want to keep it with us, Sister Maureen. Maureen is coming as I'm saying the name. It's beautiful. Okay, everyone, open your video. Otherwise, you won't be there. I got it. Over to you, Manoj bhai.
Yeah, thank you, Anu sister. So we'll just go into the meditation, and I'll play some soft music. Is that okay, Sister Maureen, in the background?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Soul to soul. We are all one. Each one of us has the inherent worth. So in every word, in my vision, in my interaction, let me maintain the deep regard. And dignity towards every being. And hold sacred their life. Each one of us has come onto this planet has this inherent worth. We don't have to prove anything. We are valuable beings. So let us care, honor, respect. Each one, whether it's my colleagues, my spiritual family, the worldwide human family of souls. Let me acknowledge Seek to understand in order to love and recognize the beauty and greatness in each soul. It also includes myself. Imagine a world where we accepted, appreciated, acknowledged, and honored each other. That world begins with me. So let me vow to practice this in my life, taking power on the one. Power, love, truth. To stay in my dignity to all. And namaste. About the light in you. Motion.
So thank you so much once again, Sister Maureen, for your presence and sharings. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Lovely to be with all of you. Om Shanti.
Shanti.